And welcome to another Biddle. I think we have it right now, just so you know. Can we get a confirmation from chat that everything is going through the video and the audio all at the same time? That would be cool.
Yes.
Yep, I've just heard the Big Daddy Linux tune playing, so...
All right.
Yeah.
So,
working.
this
Yeah,
is
it's working.
Biddle for Saturday, June 1st. First week back. It's terrible. But, so, anyway, as I said previously, but I'll say it again for everybody to hear in the video, that I really appreciate Zeb and Dan taking over for me last week while I was away. And I got to watch half of the episode on the way home and half of it afterwards. But thank you guys. I appreciate it.
More than welcome.
Yep, our pleasure.
All right. So what I'm going to do this time around is I'm going to go to Dan for the Ubuntu 1904 challenge. And then we'll come back to Zeb because I don't think he wants to say it all over again right
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll give him a break.
now. Okay.
GNOME is not my favorite, for sure. But I do love Ubuntu, so that's great. I like the spin that Ubuntu puts on GNOME. If that makes sense, it makes it less painful for me. One of the things that really drives me nuts, I mean, I love the fact that we're able to add tweaks and extensions and stuff, but I hate the fact that we have to have them. I feel like it's like a second-class citizen. It's not like rolled right into GNOME. So for me, that does bug me a little, actually a lot, and it probably is the one thing that keeps me from running it more than I do. So there's that. Other than that, it's Ubuntu. It works with, hardware, all hardware, it seems like. So I do love that.
Awesome. Zeb, we'll come back to you now. Give you a break.
Not a problem. Well, I did a bit of an extreme distro hop tonight. I only started installing Ubuntu at 9 o'clock. But then by 9:30, it was all done, up and running. Everything I want to use is working. Steam is working, Telegram's working. The wonderful OBS Snap from Mr. Pope is working, and that allows me to play ETS2, and that's all working. So Ubuntu is just one of those distros that just works. It's not for me because I don't like GNOME, and I didn't like Unity before that. So the base is what makes it an excellent distro, because people can build off of it. You've got Ubuntu, Kubuntu, Peppermint. You've got loads of distros, but it's still the distro that I tell people, look, if you want to go and have a look at Linux and you want to go and play with it and see how it works, go to Ubuntu or go to Linux Mint, and you'll have an easy time of it because there's lots and lots of help. So whilst it's not for me, it is still one of the ones that I push to people to say, go and try to Ubuntu. It's good. So it gets a thumbs up from me, but it's not for me.
Well, you mentioned the OBS Snap, and actually that's what I'm using to record this. So thank you, Alan. Appreciate that.
Oh, no worries.
I installed it on the test machine because I wanted to. I didn't want to lose what I had on there, but I needed to try it because I haven't tried it in a while, and they have refined it a lot since I tried it, and it looks really good. The theming of it is excellent. The icons are excellent. I do have one weird thing that I don't understand, and maybe it's just me. So have you guys integrated the extensions into the desktop environment without them being extensions anymore? Because I have 3 extensions installed. So I installed GNOME Tweaks. If I open up GNOME Tweaks, the extensions show as disabled.
Yeah, we had to do a bit of funky stuff to get those extensions working. I don't fully understand this. I don't work on the desktop team. I'm not a developer. I don't play one on TV. But as I understand it, the way the extensions are packaged, they're packaged as debs, and that's not how you would normally have extensions packaged. You normally like download them yourself, and they'd be in your home directory somewhere. They'd be, in some hidden folder somewhere. And I think, I don't know fully, but I think there's some reason why the tweak tool doesn't quite get this right. It may be looking in the wrong place. It might know that they're there, but isn't able to enable them because you're running tweak as your user, not root.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
and sorry, I was just going to say you can't enable or disable, but you can actually change settings.
Yeah.
So
and
it's
those settings will be personal to you.
Okay.
The ability to enable and disable them wouldn't work because they're debs. They're not installed inside your home directory. I don't know if there's a better way of I mean, you can remove the debs and then manually install the same extensions via the same way. I don't know a better solution than that. I'm sure there's probably an answer on askubuntu.com which covers this, but I don't know is the answer.
Right. Well, it was weird that was coming up like that because actually the desktop icons is usually the one I disable because I'm probably the only user that didn't mind them removing desktop icons before.
Me as well.
So now I can't disable desktop icons because they're built in.
You could probably
I'd like to be
uninstall
able
the
to turn them
package.
on and off.
Package name for it is GNOME Shell Extension TAC Desktop Icons. So you can
Yeah, so if you uninstall it, it'll probably remove that.
I'll have to try that. That's awesome feedback. But overall, it is rock solid and it looks really good. So I appreciate that. Eris, you are up, sir.
Well, I started the week by installing Kylan, so I'll go over that first. Overall, to me, Kylan was very interesting, very flat design, probably the most modern implementation of Mate that I've ever seen. And though the icons look kind of like from KDE 4, 3.5, those could probably look better. The menu in Chilin or Kylan reminded me of Whisker menu. It was interesting they shipped their own store and also the GNOME store. And the only reason I stopped using it pretty much was because my fans were going full tilt for I don't know what reason. Maybe it was because I wasn't using the proprietary NVIDIA drivers. I'm not sure. And well, I think it was very interesting. As far as Ubuntu Vanilla, I really haven't liked GNOME for the longest time, ever since they went to version 3. I do want to give praise to Ubuntu for finally changing that Alt tab to a sane default that actually switches windows now. I could never understand why it switches. You can select the applications within, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And
same here.
also, I think I love the icons of the Ubuntu. I think those are the best default icons of any distro that I've ever tried. But overall, GNOME's not for me. I don't like even though I don't use the icons for the desktop, I don't like it. You can't copy icons like just from dragging from a folder to it and taking away. It doesn't make sense to me. And after like a few hours, I just gave up on GNOME. It mostly came down to because it's as trivial as it sounds. I have like a weather app I like having on my panel, and I could not get a weather app going on GNOME. And at that point, I'm just like, why am I even using GNOME? I could just go back to Plasma, and I have pretty much everything GNOME has and more.
There's an extension called, I think it's Open Weather Extension or something like that, and that handles the it shows you right next to the clock and stuff in the middle.
Yep.
I tried like several and I couldn't get them to work. I don't know if it's because they haven't been updated yet, but I don't know. Then that's about it.
All right. So it was all good. Bash, sir, did you try Ubuntu 1904?
I did not.
All right. Do you have anything you want to say about it?
Well, from all I understand, it's the best implementation of GNOME if that's the route you want to go. If you're looking to have a more traditional, desktop experience. But yeah, that's as far as I know. I didn't get a chance to mess with it.
Okay. Peter, you're up, sir.
Okay, I have quite upsetting news for some of you. I did all the flavors over the last few weeks. I installed it on my Alienware laptop. Every flavor worked great. Ubuntu Vanilla or Ubuntu GNOME was a big fat fail. The fail was that actual Ubuntu would install, but once I went to install the NVIDIA 340 driver, the whole thing would just crash. and I couldn't get past the GNOME display driver. Oh, sorry, GNOME display manager. It would not go past it. I couldn't find a way past it. I tried it twice, 2 different ISOs, 2 different installs. Every other flavor worked fine. Ubuntu vanilla didn't work.
How were you installing the driver?
App to install NVIDIA 340.
Possibly try using sudo Ubuntu drivers auto install because it might install a different
I
version.
also tried from the default, but you know what it says, install the NVIDIA drivers for you. I tried that too. So I tried it a few different ways.
Do you need the 340 driver for a specific card, Peter?
Yes.
Which card is it?
I don't have that detail on me right now.
I remember you talking about it before. Something about it was an older card. So
It is an older card. It's like an 8-9-year-old laptop. So, but I'm not going to try again. It was a test. I mean, but all the flavors worked fine. So I don't know what was going on. Mate, Ubuntu Mate works great.
It's the same driver, though. I don't understand.
I know. I don't understand either.
That's weird.
It might be an issue with how GDM is handing off to the user session.
I say it goes through all the starting, and I've got a picture on my phone here. And once it gets started, GNOME Display Manager, it just stops and locks up.
And did you try starting it with no mode set on the Linux line?
I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah, if when you get to the grub menu and you would normally press enter, press E for edit, arrow down until you see the word Linux, and then press end, and you'll go right to the end. And if you then type in space no mode set, all one word, and see if that beats it.
I've been using Linux for over 10 years, and you just train me on something.
That's why we're here every week.
Yeah. But it was a test. We'll see what we're doing for next week. So, pass.
Next. All right, Colin, you are up, and I'm sure you're on Ubuntu right now.
Yes, I am. I'm running Ubuntu as we speak, and I've thrown everything at it this week. Installed .debs, Flatpaks, Snap, the Snap store, installed things from the Snap store, and trying everything possible, and all seems to be running well. Got the latest NVIDIA drivers running with my Optimus NVIDIA, and that's running fine as well. So
nice.
Everything just seems to be flowing quite well. I've installed my dash to panel, and I'm running a Windows type flow in here with dash to panel, and that's all working well. The only thing I've noticed is Zoom Flatpak doesn't have a indicator icon. Is that what you call them? The ones that come up on the panel when it's running?
Right.
The small icon. Yeah, it's an app indicator, isn't it? Or something like that. Yeah, the Flatpak doesn't have one. The Telegram Snap does, but not the Zoom Flatpak. So
you installed the dash to panel on Ubuntu?
Yep.
And did it automatically override the
Yes,
the
it
dock
does.
the dock settings?
As soon as you install it, it zips straight down to the bottom and working straight out. So you can turn it off and it'll go back to normal. But it used to be an issue, I think a couple of releases ago, but now it just seems to be seamless with the change. So there doesn't seem to interrupt anything now. So they've done a pretty good job with all that. So I just find everything works pretty well. So I'm pretty happy with the way this is working.
If I recall correctly, I think that the Ubuntu desktop team put some work into specifically allowing like dash to panel or dash to dock to take over the Ubuntu dock as soon as it was installed. So I'm glad
I think that's right. Yeah, because it's really, because there was issues there when it first came, when they first started doing the GNOME desktop. But they seem to have worked a lot of those issues out. So, and I'm very happy with the way that a lot of the what's the names, the extensions. I'm very happy with the way that they keep up with the extensions now, because normally on an interim release, you find it hard to get updated extensions, but that seems to be, they seem to be right on top of that now. So most things are installing. So it's good.
Nice. All right, then, Colin, thanks very much indeed. Frank, Bill, MS, MCB. Over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Zeb. So I did install it, obviously. And I think several weeks ago when we were doing like the beta of 1904 and we had this up, one of the big things, and no one's mentioned it today, is we were talking about the awesomeness in the settings part. They have the applications now, where you're going to be able to go in and do some privacy and control of individual applications. And that is really forward thinking. I mean, obviously there's some phone based, because that's what everyone on Android and iPhone is seeing, application control. Whether it really does anything on your phones is a whole other story. But everything on 1904, it is, like some people have said, it is the best implementation of GNOME out there. Most of the time that I see GNOME, it's on a standalone Red Hat CentOS server, and it's horrible. Absolutely. I just hate seeing the default GNOME that Red Hat ships. But with some of the add-ons you can put, I can make stock Ubuntu 1904 look, to me, almost usable. And that's not a knock on it. The desktop team has done great. The speed is improved. The default icon set isn't horrible. And then, Alan and Wimpy and his team, when we were doing the original, there was a little bit of pushback to how slow some of the default snaps were running. I'm not seeing that at all. The snaps are running just as well as the default applications that they've replaced. And I just think everything is nice. It works. And I think, obviously, I don't love GNOME, but anybody could use it and make a successful desktop.
Cool. All right. Anything else, Frank?
Now, that's the only thing I would like to say is just if Alan or Morton could maybe say how, like, the Canonical's desktop team, what do they only work with GNOME, or do they actually do anything with any of the flavors? Because I don't really see any interaction with our team and them. But that's Martin may obviously be dealing with them a lot more than I'll ever see.
Yeah, you do. So, though those interactions generally happen on the IRC channels on Freenode, and they happen in one of several places in Ubuntu-desktop, Ubuntu-devel, sometimes Ubuntu-flavors, sometimes Ubuntu-release. It really depends, the nature of what's going on. So at the moment, for example, the work is happening to seed the NVIDIA proprietary drivers on the ISO image so that they're available if you're doing an install without an internet connection. And the Foundations team are assisting with that work. And similarly, a few of the flavors use a display manager that's part of Ubiquity when you do the install. And that's changing slightly. And the Foundations team, again, are assisting Ubuntu Mate and Ubuntu Budgie with that transition. And stuff to do with the desktop, when the wireless portal login stuff landed a couple of releases ago, that was shared around among the flavor leads so that they could choose whether or not they wanted to implement that. So there is interactions. They're obviously not in our Slack, but on IRC, all of that stuff gets shared.
Okay, that's I think one of the things that we saw recently is one of the things that Simon did is getting that all the flavors come together and talk. And one of the really good things I think that might come out of some of that stuff that you guys are doing is to get that openness so people really see what Canonical does and how much Canonical does. Because I see some of the stuff, and there's a discussion that we had about an article that was there and some security stuff, but people don't really think about how much the kernel team and the security team, how much work those guys put in. They kind of get forgotten about because it's not sexy. And people get mad because their driver isn't in the kernel and the kernel's outdated and all this other crap. But they do so much and they don't really get the credit for it. And I think if we can get some people to really see what some of the different teams and how they help each other, maybe some of this little vitriol that Canonical gets might go away, but probably not because it's Linux.
Nah, it won't go away.
Nah, it won't. You have to change people in order to have that go away, dude. And the people have to want to be changed. So,
but it is fair to say that all of the Ubuntu flavors benefit from that type of work that gets done by Canonical. That really, you're right. It's not sexy, but it's important, and it's what leads to such great experiences we all have, whether we're using Ubuntu proper or any of the variants.
You've also got to remember, when you see any negativity online headed towards us, bear in mind that's a really tiny proportion of the user base, a tiny number of users. You might see 3 or 4 people like bundling together, and they're all saying similar negative things, but there are millions of people out there who aren't, and who are quite happily using their system.
Yeah, the vocal minority, right?
Yep, totally.
And it's the cool thing right now to fight the corporation.
Yeah.
Sounds like that, yeah.
Because, Canonical is not a corporation.
Well, that's what they're looked at.
There's a man with pocket full of magic internet coins that makes it happen.
He's got some big pockets as well, that guy. Anyway, Eric, you're up, my friend. What did you make of Ubuntu?
Well, I have some notes here. So split up between the desktop and the system. So my positives for the desktop are it's GNOME with the missing pieces added back, in my opinion. I know some people like it how it is. I'm not going to argue about it. It's just the way I like it. And it does seem like it's much snappier. So in terms of the GNOME team and the work they've done to make it more performant, that's, they made that a big focus, and it really did seem to pay off. I think the Unity layout is really familiar, and it's usable and configurable enough to be, just something you can pick up and run with without needing to do a lot of different tweaking. So, that's a positive thing. And when you think about overall Linux usage on a desktop, the vast majority of people are using Ubuntu, and the vast majority of those people are using just vanilla Ubuntu. So everybody's sort of used to that, and the consistency that's there, they were able to make GNOME into something that approaches Unity, and I think that really helps sort of bridge that gap and move them forward. The default software that comes with it is mostly sensible and things that you would expect to be there without much bloat, which is nice. There are a lot of custom distributions or offshoot distributions that I think do too much there, where they try to pack everything in, and I think that's just a mistake in some ways. Excuse me. Snap applications are visually consistent on a GTK desktop environment. So for me, Snap, I have issues because I'm on KDE, and not everything sort of looks great. It doesn't mesh very well, but on Ubuntu proper and the other GTK variants, like, it looks great. It runs really well. I love that it's integrated with the website. You can just click install and it'll open the store for you. Like that the permissions are there. So there's a lot of like evolution of Snap that's very visible in this release to me. Some of the negative things are, and these are mostly GNOME things. So the mix of the top bar menu and the application menus, it just frustrates me to no end. Like, am I supposed to click up here? Am I supposed to click over here? Like, just make up your mind. I've actually been running global menus on KDE recently, just because, to try it out. And I know that's more of a Mac thing, but it's nice to have everything sort of in one place. So I get the methodology there. So having it in 2 places, I don't get that. Clicking an open application in the dock does not minimize it. And I know that's a small thing, but God, it drives me crazy. And there's no way to customize it. So if you have dash to dock, you can customize that behavior. So if Ubuntu is going to keep shipping, I don't know if they're basing what they've done off of dash to dock, but it would be kind of nice to actually include some more of that configuration in there.
Yeah, the desktop team do work with the dash to dock developer. They work very closely.
Okay. I mean, some of the options that are in there, I think, are overkill and probably don't get changed by a lot of people, but there are certain ones I think, like, what happens when I click it? What happens when I middle click it? That kind of stuff. And that's definitely coming from like a KDE Plasma mentality, where it's like, there's got to be a way to configure that, right? So the Yara theme, is, I think it's a better option than Adwaita, however you say that. But I still have some issues with the contrast. The title bars, they do lighten a little when it's not the active application, but they're not light enough to sort of, to me, it gets messy when there's like 5 or 6 windows open. If they're smaller windows, they sort of kind of blend a little bit. And I have some vision issues, so maybe that's just me that has that issue. But so I think if they were to continue to evolve that and look at some of the usability, that would probably help some users. We talked about installing extensions. So it's a bummer to me that, GNOME, you need the extensions to customize the desktop. I go to the website, it tells me I need an add-on for the browser. I do that. Then I need to install an add-on, a package. I do that. And then I need to go to the tweak tool. So it's there. You can customize it. You can do things, but it just feels like there are barriers between me and being able to do that. And
I think that's largely intentional, though, because they're like you can get to a situation where one-click install of an extension will break your desktop, break it to the point where you can't log in anymore, or even break it to the point where you can't even see the login screen anymore.
Okay,
and that's a fatal problem. And if we make it, like we've always tried to remove, the possibility for a user to shoot themselves in the foot. Like we turned off the Control-Alt backspace, and there's other things we undid, like the RM-RF. We added that feature that makes that difficult to do. And I appreciate that expert users might want to RM their root file system for whatever reason,
if that's what they want to do.
Yeah,
or on a Saturday night.
But we try and put a few guardrails in, and I think the extensions thing is a bit of a problem because you really can make a mess of your system. And what happens when you install an extension and you make a mess of your system? People come to us. They moan about us.
But I mean, if you want to play silly like that, just install Suicide Linux.
Right. GNOME has the vision, just like other desktop environments do, where they want you to use it the way they intend it, rather than to customize it everywhere. And that's part of the reason why the extensions are hard to put on.
You said GNOME like other desktops. What other desktops?
Elementary OS would come to mind.
Yeah. All right.
They want you to use it the way they intend it. Otherwise, I don't know.
Well,
they just
so
want you the way they.
I get the supporting it, right? So there's the consistency of the default configuration. This is how it ships. Okay, if you're having a problem, what have you done to make a change to that default configuration? Because, so anyway, and I think that's just more of a complaint of mine, and why GNOME to me is a challenging system to use. Exactly like you say, Rocco. If you don't decide to do it their way, so. A couple more things and I'm done. So GNOME software itself, which I know is Ubuntu software, but it's just GNOME software. It's buggy. I had a lot of problems with it. Search results disappear, which is confounding because they show as you're typing, and then when you stop typing, they just disappear. And I could reliably repeat that. So I'll look and see if there's a bug. I assume there is, but anyway, and then the results that you get they feel like they're hodgepodge. It's no kind of order that I can tell. There's no filtering. There's no sorting. It's to me, it's very frustrating because I'm precise. I use the command line. I know what I want. I'm just testing it just to see if it's usable. And I can imagine from a user standpoint that isn't familiar with apt, that, I mean, I don't know. I type in Telegram in there and see what happens. And it's just, I mean, you just get all these different streams of listings of packages. Anyway, I'm going to stop there, but it's not a friendly experience if that's the point of GNOME software. So, and a couple more things. The system itself, Peter had issues with the NVIDIA driver. To me, Ubuntu does the NVIDIA. For this laptop, I have an XPS 15 laptop with a 1050 Ti. The Prime Pro configuration works perfectly every time. It's the only distribution that does for me. And so and all of them, like Peter said, I mean, I've tried all of them and they all work perfectly in 1904, which is excellent. And there's some little things I need to change, like power saving. sleep settings, but those are mostly, I think, Dell specific issues and not anything that Ubuntu themselves could handle for me, but I know how to fix them, so it's not a big deal. And the mix of newer packages in the repos and snaps and flatpaks and app images. So the arguments of like, in the past, I felt like I needed something like Arch or a rolling distro where if I wanted to run up-to-date packages. But now, honestly, I would be perfectly happy running, and I am perfectly happy running the latest whatever Ubuntu with whatever snaps and flatpaks I need to add in. And it's stable. It runs great. It's got the driver support I need, the hardware support I need. And like Zeb said, it just works. I'm an Ubuntu fanboy. I'm not gonna lie. Like they do great work. I'm a big fan of Canonical. I think they make smart decisions. They employ smart people. And if it wasn't for them, I think Linux in general would be much more difficult for me to use to the effect that I do. So
cool. Job offers in the post.
Well, I installed the NVIDIA drivers from the additional drivers in software and updates. And everything went fine. So I'm not exactly sure what happened with Peter. I would assume that it was because of the older driver, but
it is known that some of the newer NVIDIA drivers don't work great with older cards, and it's one of the reasons why if you install Ubuntu and you tick the box that says install the NVIDIA driver, you don't get the very latest driver. We do that for a reason, because we do QA, and we know that the net result might be you boot to a black screen, and nobody wants,
Yeah, it's 390 at the moment, isn't it? It does it by default.
Yeah.
Although on 1904, I think it's 418.
Yeah, it is 418.
418, yeah.
Yeah. Because I didn't add the PPA and it gave me 418.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, Chris, did you get to try Ubuntu?
Yeah, and I've used Ubuntu on and off through my various Linux experiences since probably about 2008. Fedora and Ubuntu have been the two that I've always gone to. Primarily, I was gravitating towards Fedora because they had more of a Windows setup, and Ubuntu had more of a Mac setup. And I didn't like the way Mac did their screens and stuff like that. So, but with the 1904 and even some of the earlier versions, I've come to be really comfortable with it, really like it. I still going to stick with Fedora unless something catastrophic happens. But I use Ubuntu in a testing environment because I know things will work. One thing I think I've figured out why people have such hate for GNOME or GNOME or whatever we want to call it is it reminds me a lot of the Metro interface from Windows, in that it seems as though it was designed with the touch tablet in mind, with the minimalist icons, and you click on activities to get the list of applications. It just seems to work out that way. I don't know if it was intentional or if it's just me, trying to fill in the gaps. I don't know, but it seems as though that was the case. The difference between is GNOME actually works, and Metro was a failure before it came out of the box. So,
it's funny. People used to tell us they didn't like Unity because it was designed for touch screens, and the evidence for it, being designed for touchscreens was that it had large friendly icons, and you press these big buttons and then the dash appears, and it's about as far from the truth as you can get, because Unity is a very keyboard centric user interface. It's you could do everything with the keyboard, and there's loads of keyboard shortcuts, even to the point where we punch you in the face when you first log in with a dialogue that shows you what the keyboard shortcuts are. And I think that's similar with GNOME. It's very keyboard centric.
It is.
I've never seen GNOME Shell run on a touch screen machine and look at home. I think it looks like it should, but I don't think it does.
Someone had a question earlier in the week in one of the Telegram groups about a 10-foot display for Ubuntu, and I thought, isn't that kind of already there? I mean, I would think if I was using the default desktop on a large screen HD TV from 20 feet away, 10 feet away, like it would all be pretty visible. Maybe the fonts would need to be scaled up. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be kind of the interesting thing is, would fonts actually scale very well, and that's one of the things that really keeps the Linux desktop from keeping up with the Windows desktop is those Microsoft WYSIWYGs, and I mean what you see is what you get on the screen here, but I mean the fact is that things like Times New Roman and proprietary fonts and stuff like that look just. I don't know if Wayland is going to do any better, or if Wayland's just going to die a horrible death, and X is going to remain king. But it just seems though that when it comes to trying to copy some of the fonts and the look of a Windows machine, that's where most people or most distros fail as well. Not necessarily Ubuntu or anything like that.
I don't want to be disagreeable, but I have to say that my laptop, my last Dell that had a 1080p screen, I had a very hard time getting Windows fonts to look, because you basically you have the 100%, or you can kind of slide up a little bit, and I like small icons and I like small windows, but I like readable font. And I know that's probably a strange combination, but anyway, so the GTK desktop environments, GNOME being one of them, if you go to tweak, there's a scaling factor under the fonts, and that actually works pretty well for someone like me who just really wants the fonts to be a little bit bigger than they are without having to set them all to 18 pixels or something.
Well, I haven't done any kind of scientific study. This is pure thought on my what I've thought and felt, which is it's an opinion, it's not a fact. So I'll defer to Eric on that.
I'm just saying, like, it's something that I've noticed, especially using Plasma, is that I think GTK is doing a better job with that font scaling than KDE does, and certainly Windows in my history, my experience.
Well, everything seems to be getting better. It's just how much longer is there going to be a desktop?
Well, that's a bigger topic.
Yeah, but that's off topic for what we're doing right at the moment. So anyway, no, I'm really liking Ubuntu. I'm liking all the flavors of Ubuntu, and the granddaddy of them all. I think it's doing fine. It is something really that you can give to a new user and say, you want to see what it's like, play with this. And I mean, literally play with this, click on something, try to destroy it. And you'll find that you in an environment that may look a little different, but it's going to work. Your workflow is just going to be a lot better.
All right, Barbara.
Okay. One, I didn't get a chance to play with it this week. It was just kind of a little crazy. And and two, I'm not a GNOME, whatever fan. I'm just not. And so I thought, no, I'll just sit here and irritate myself, and I just didn't do it.
That's okay.
I much prefer my Ubuntu Mate. I'm happy,
Out of interest, what is it that grinds your gears about GNOME?
I think what really gets me is things like you have to get extensions, you have to install extensions just to do things. I haven't used it in a long time, so I don't know which ones anymore. But at least with Mate, if I want to do something, move my buttons from the right to the left, for instance, it's just a check mark, that kind of stuff. So it doesn't have those customizing and tailoring features. That's what bothers me.
Right.
That's really it.
Aren't they in known tweaks though and stuff like that? Which isn't an extension; it's just a program you add.
It's not installed by default,
right?
So
No,
you've
it's
got
not.
to go
No,
and
yeah.
hunt down this tool to allow you
Yeah.
to move around. Right.
And that to me, that's what makes it for me. I mean, when somebody asks me, oh, what they want to try Linux, I suggest Ubuntu Mate because one, it's Ubuntu, so it's going to work on almost any machine. And two, Mate, you can always get it to look like what you're comfortable with, what you're familiar with. And I don't know, GNOME, I just can't do that.
Okay,
not
thank you.
easily. Let's put it that way. It's not part of the package. You have to go out and get it, type of stuff. So that's just my reasoning.
Well, Thomas is not here tonight, but he wanted to beg to get GNOME tweaks installed by default in 1910 or 2004.
That's a good idea. I don't know why tweaks
would
is
make
not.
sense.
Yeah,
Just saying, throwing it out there. Chicken.
Is that along with the low latency kernel?
Well, he did give his opinion on it, and basically what he said was he liked it. It works great. He likes the fact that the panel is dark at the top, regardless, so the transparency is gone because it makes it look like he's running a dark theme. But his biggest gripe is that GNOME tweaks by default. So there you go.
It should be.
Now, Chicken, you may go.
Well, I mean, I'm one of the weird ones who I actually kind of like GNOME quite a bit. And I like what Ubuntu's done with it. This is the release that has kind of restored my faith in Ubuntu on the desktop, like fully. Before, I mean, I wasn't quite happy with it. There were a lot of issues I had with GNOME, in just stability issues or issues with things like snaps just not kind of looking right. Everything has been ironed out in this for me. Like I install it and I get started working right away. I'm not sitting there trying to fiddle with it. I think the way it looks is great. It's appealing to the eye, which I know isn't always important for some people. But
It is very important, more important than most people want to think about.
yeah, like if it looks awful, I'm not going to have fun using it, and I'm just going to spend time changing that. And I shouldn't have to spend so much time changing the way it looks. Like it's 2019. But no, it looks really great. I love the Ubuntu dock on the side. It feels kind of like a nice mix between the GNOME way of working and kind of like a typical panel-based way of working. You know, I like that kind of somewhat familiarity with how Ubuntu dock was on the left. I just like how that's all working. And I'm going to be honest with you. Like I've started using snaps. Like I was actually using this after release for about 3 weeks, and then I switched back to Ye Old Faithful. But I was very, very happy with it. Everything worked from installing drivers for NVIDIA and stuff. Everything worked with snaps. I was kind of the weird person who like disabled the system tray and got rid of the desktop icons, and I was happy. I love the way workspaces are in GNOME. I think that while it's not as flexible by default as a lot of other desktops, it certainly is one of the best just out-of-the-box packages in regards to you have everything there that you need without it being cluttered or without you having to rip some things out and hammer other things in. Like, I think it's a great experience out of the box. I think Ubuntu's done a great job with this.
Good to hear.
As they say, even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Wow. So wrong, dude.
No, I had to do it just for Chicken, just because it's him. No, I you know what? Look, I saw some comments about people saying that, you know, we're hating on GNOME. We're really not. I mean, it is totally a preferential thing. And I will be the first to admit it just like I said, Ubuntu is a great base for other downstream systems. GNOME is a great system and for people who take it and do what they want with it. Chicken and I know Adam and others really like it just the way it is. They get it. That's their workflow. Fantastic. It's very keyboard driven. If you get into it and appreciate it for what it is, then you love it. And if not, then there are other systems that have taken that strong base and done other great things with it, like Cinnamon and Pantheon and Mate and all the rest of them. And if you don't like that, there's Plasma. And if you don't like that, there's XFCE. And if you don't like that, that's the beauty of all of this. So there's no hate here. There's no dissension. It's just people offering their own personal opinions for what it's worth.
Pretty much.
Okay,
No,
that was my opinion.
I agree with that, Eric, because that's what's nice is that you have choices, and yeah, and it's stable. Ubuntu is stable. It works. It doesn't go into la la land and whatever and lock up all the time. So those are all the pluses.
Hey, Wimpy, did you try that obscure distro this week?
Of course. So, yeah, I always have a current version of Ubuntu on I've got one laptop that runs all of the flavors, and I always have a copy on there. One reason, of course, I work for Canonical, so I need to be testing stuff against, proper Ubuntu from time to time. But also, as each of the releases get to the final betas, I like to run through them all and see what's changed in all of them. See if I can find anything that I didn't already know about. And 1904 was a good release for me. When I worked on the Ubuntu desktop team, I learned to appreciate Unity and what Unity set out to do. And you will have seen that I was quite enthused by a number of the technologies that came out of Unity 7, because Mutiny came along in Ubuntu Mate, and we are now using many of the technologies that Unity 7 brought to the table. And since the shift back to GNOME 3, there has been this effort to sort of recreate the Ubuntu desktop experience and get it as close to that sort of Unity experience. And I think 1904 is the first release that really gets there. There's a number of little tweaks in the way that some of the behaviors work now when you're switching windows and what have you. The indicator stuff works a bit better now. It's not perfect. That could do with some more work, but that's getting better. I think the look of it now with the Yaru theme is very distinctive, very Ubuntu. And then all of the performance improvements, this is the desktop team at their very best and really shining and demonstrating what they were great at for many years when they were working on Unity in order to really polish it and make it a slick desktop environment. And now we're seeing that work sort of coming together with performance improvements and fractional scaling and a whole bunch of improvements. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that kicks on again in 1910. So yeah, I thought 1904 release was pretty solid.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Tony, are you there, my friend?
Am I here?
Are you here? Good man. And did you try Ubuntu?
Yes, I did. I actually ran it for 2 days, which is a long time for me. I usually distro hop several times a day. But it worked fine. I quite like the GNOME desktop. I started out on Linux with something called Chapeau 24, which was based on Fedora 24 with the GNOME desktop. The only problem I had with it, which is one of the reasons why I went off of it, I went into the App Center and it gave me a pop-up message saying that it couldn't do the check for updates and that to check my internet connection. Well, my internet connection was working fine, and whatever I did, restart, anything like that, I still kept getting this message. But it didn't happen until after a couple of days, and that was the only problem I had. Other than that, it was great.
Ooh. Sure, what that could be.
Now, I have no idea what caused it.
And obviously, because you're not using it now, you haven't been able to recreate it as such.
No, I left it on for quite a long time after this popped up. I did a couple of restarts and checked to see that I hadn't altered anything, but I couldn't get rid of it. It still kept popping up all the time, and internet searching to try and sort the problem out didn't really give me any answers. So I went away from it and I went back to Manjaro XFCE, I'm afraid.
I'll translate that. That Tony said to mention he let it there for at least.
That's about right, yeah.
Cool. All right then, Tony. Well, thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Alan, I would like to come to you next because I want to know why you love the Ubuntu GNOME desktop. What is it that? No, but you must know so much about it and can tell us all the things that we're sitting here going, that's not for me. What are we missing? Why is it so good?
Well, I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I'm currently running KDE. So if I showed you my laptop right now, I'm running KDE. That one there is running 1904, and the one over there is running 1904, and another one over there is running 1904. So I have a bunch of machines running 1904. This one happens to be running 1804. I think the thing that is distinctive about Ubuntu is it's designed for normals. We try wherever possible to aim it at people who aren't necessarily going to open a terminal as the first thing they do. Like someone who installs Ubuntu, they'll go through the setup wizard, and then afterwards it says, hey, here's some software that you might want to install, and takes you to GNOME software where you might want to install some additional software, because nobody just uses the out-of-the-box experience. Everyone wants to install extra stuff, all your favorites. People want Spotify for their music, they want VLC to play their videos, and so we guide them in the right direction. And we know that a large proportion of the user base is pretty technical, and so we also show them developer oriented things like Android Studio and other software that we know our user base. It's hard to tell exactly what proportion, but there's certainly a bunch of people who are normies, just computer users, and there's a bunch who are technical developers, and we try to appeal to both of them, and that's a hard balance to do.
It is.
To not make people think, oh, this is for this is Teletubbies Linux for babies, but also not be like Arch and make it intentionally hard to do stuff. So, and you've got to try and find a balance. I think GNOME Desktop with the Yaru theme, with GNOME software packed full of stuff that you want, is the way to go.
Okay. Well, thanks very much indeed for your insights.
No worries.
Good. Adam, you obviously hate GNOME, so it won't take long, will it?
Yeah. This won't take long. So we're all Linux users, so we're supposed to hate this because Canonical made it, right?
Yes, you got it.
Okay. All right, so I'm on the right track. All right. No,
That's perfectly cromulent.
I think 1904 was a great release, and two big words that stuck out for me: fractional scaling. Man. So it's always, it's been available in Wayland for a while, but the fact that it works under X, I don't know who did it, but I want to give them a Hershey kiss or something. But it's amazing. It's that right there sold me on the distro, because I couldn't replicate it elsewhere. So I don't know what exactly they did, but awesome. And the theme that what is it called? Uru, you said?
Yaru.
Okay. Yeah, that the theme is really great. I'm a big fan of defaults, right? How does it feel when I first start using it? And that's big to me. And the icons are inviting yet competent. The colors are great. So the look and feel is amazing. The GNOME, I think it's 3.32, is actually really quick and very smooth, especially compared to 1804. And of course, Linux 5 comes with it. So if you have AMD cards, it's even better. For me, the main workflow that I have is a web browser, Steam, Telegram, Spotify, and Discord. That's it. I can get all that done in a matter of a couple minutes, and I'm up and running. That's it. I know there's people with way more complex, and there's other stuff I install too. But for me to sit down at a computer, those are the 5 things I need, and That's dead simple with snaps and Ubuntu. It's a great package. I can't really speak anything negative. I'm a big fan of GNOME, and I normally run like vanilla GNOME. I know that's bizarre to people, but
that is bizarre.
So if I were to add extensions to GNOME, the ones that Ubuntu has are perfectly sane in my book, except for the desktop icons. But I say that, I don't know why. In Linux, desktop icons, I never use them, but like, on Mac OS or something, I use them. I don't know. But anyway, it's a weird. But
So
yeah,
Adam, I was going to say, Chicken mentioned taking things back to sort of make it more like vanilla GNOME, and you're a vanilla GNOME user. So do the things that Canonical does for Ubuntu in terms of the things that they add back to GNOME. You're saying those are the types of things that you would add back. So being a vanilla user, do you see that as like a positive thing? Like, do you get it? Like, when you're using it, is it something that you would continue to use that way, or like Chicken, took some things away, or?
So again, I'm a big fan of defaults. I'm a big fan of the out of the box experience. And so when I get like an Arch install or a Fedora install, and they just, I know Fedora's not exactly vanilla GNOME, but this like vanilla, no system tray and all that stuff, I'm fine with that. That's what I just use, and I can live happily in that world. And I don't have to worry about extensions causing problems either. But in Ubuntu, the extensions, or however they're configured, they're not offensive. Like, they're not like, it's not like somebody's horrible desktop conky in my face. Like, it's actually like usable stuff.
If I may, it also comes down to like, it's not like GNOME, it's Ubuntu.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So I don't look at it like, yeah, sure, it's GNOME, but I do look at it as it's Ubuntu, right? And I feel like we should treat them differently. The Ubuntu guys have their own design and their own vision for what the desktop should be. It's the fact that it's built on GNOME is beside the point.
I just want to know what you have against conkies.
Oh my! Have you seen people's conkies? Like, man, no.
I saw a really nice one who hang out in our IRC channel, and he'd got like a wireframe diagram of his laptop on the screen, and then these little like bits all around it with little lines pointing to various parts of the laptop. It looks, and they were all the like CPU, heat, memory, and all this. Like, it just looked like a diagram that
like
was
a schematic or something.
Yeah,
nice,
amazing. Yeah, that I really
Okay,
liked.
see, that's unique. That's fine. But like the people who have like a million bars and a million things on it, no, yeah.
Well, if you want to see one like that, I think there's one on the Ubuntu forums by Vin Diesel. He's like the guru, or Vin DSL, but he's Vin Diesel. He's like a guru of Conky, and that thread is like 294 pages long from when it first came out. And everybody keeps saying to him, "Can you just post up how you get your Conky?" Because he's got a full screen on the right hand side that goes top to bottom. He says it's too complicated. You can't just tell you how to do it. You have to read through and learn Conky, which I don't think you have to do. Really, I think he's just being lazy. But it's an awesome thread, and he often points people to it. They read the first 2 pages and give up. It's quite funny.
Yeah. So I mean, as far as like conkies go, just to finish that up, if I need to look at like how much CPU and memory and things I'm using, it's probably because my machine's having trouble. I don't really need to know that all the time.
Quick question for you then. You talked about fractional scaling. Where? Because I'm looking at the screen display now, and all I can see is 100%, 200%, 300%. Do I have to turn something on?
There's a command. I can probably find it for you and give it to you in Telegram. There's a command that you run that will enable it, and it's superb.
So why isn't it enabled by default?
It's experimental, and
okay.
Was that the work that Marco did with the upstream GNOME people? I don't know if Wimpy's still there.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. So yeah, one of the guys who works on the Ubuntu desktop team worked with the upstream GNOME developers in order to implement that. And
so theoretically, that should work on other GNOME.
it's currently an out of tree patch, so it's pending review upstream. We're carrying it as a vendor patch at the moment. And
Okay.
yes, all of the gnomes will get it in due course. And my understanding is it's still considered an experimental feature at the moment, and I expect that will become a fully fledged feature during 1910.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Thank you very much indeed. Big Pod. Welcome.
Okay. Yeah. I'm right now on Ubuntu GNOME. It's great. Works. Sure, it's not perfect. It's GNOME, but I can use it okay. And nothing really to be sad about or angry about. It's GNOME. It's okay to use. Better than KDE, and that tells a lot.
I guess that's all personal preference, though, right?
Yeah, but KDE is crap. That's you can't tell me anything else.
Rocco, he's allowed his wrong opinion.
He is allowed his wrong opinion, and he is wrong in that opinion.
Problem is you're allowed to your wrong opinion, not me.
Don't say that when I'm drinking seltzer. I almost spewed it on my keyboard.
We're just gonna let
time we're talking with GNOME.
We're just gonna let Big Pot in his wrong opinion. Tuck stop.
Well, it's
Are you there, brother?
the good thing
Yes.
is your
Can you hear me?
desktop you like is Plasma.
I like Plasma and GNOME, so I don't have a problem with either. It's always, though, a love-hate relationship. Anyway, Tuck stop. You there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, how you been, man?
Good, good. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has.
I thought I'll stop by this evening. Ubuntu 1904 GNOME. It's been my favorite. I've always relied on Ubuntu, and I like my keyboard work.
Uh-oh. Your audio's cutting out, brother.
Get Simon to fix it.
Are you still there? All right, we'll try to get back to him.
I think we lost him.
Nate, did you try it?
Good evening.
How are you?
Of course I tried it. I'm well. I made it. It was kind of a stormy, rainy drive home, and I made it. So I'm happy about that. I didn't hydroplane into a ditch, so
That's a plus.
life's good. So Ubuntu. I mean, I think I always keep on top of Ubuntu because, well, I like to test things, make sure I do some tech help stuff for people. So I have to know. You got to know the beast, right? You got to know it. So I think this is my personal opinion. I don't like GNOME, but I will say of all the GNOME implementations, Ubuntu's is my favorite. So everyone else has pretty much covered everything that I have positive to say about it. So I'll just say, like, from my perspective, I don't like GNOME, but I like Ubuntu's GNOME so much that if I had to choose GNOME and I had to run GNOME on any distribution and it had to be GNOME, as much as I love my OpenSUSE and I'm almost wedded to it, I would actually leave to go to Ubuntu. That's how much I like their GNOME compared to the rest.
That's high praise indeed.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so
there's no zipper, dude.
That's the problem. If I could somehow get Zipper to work in GNOME, I mean, and Ubuntu, that'd be great.
We can make
but
an
anyway,
alias.
yeah, probably could. Could you help me out with that, Mr. Pope?
No.
Anyway, but honestly, I think it looks better than the typical GNOME. I think than vanilla GNOME. Everything about it just if I were a technical numpty, I could jump into Ubuntu GNOME or Ubuntu proper, I should say, and get along just fine. It's just well done, and I think that they do a great job. You've already said all the good things about Snappy and all the has all the software, so we got that already covered. So, but that's what I have to say about it. I mean, it's GNOME, so that's my negative.
Nice.
Doesn't have.
All right, Dave, how are you, sir?
Much better now that my massive rebuilding of OpenSUSE and their 3,000 package update today finished. But
you can push those off. You don't have to do them as soon as they say.
I didn't expect it to be that big, and I was in a meeting all day, so I got on 6:15 and said zipper doop, and
it tells you right there. It says 3,000 some odd packages, and you just say no.
Yeah, I'm not that smart.
I can't put it off forever.
Oh.
I was smart enough to put Ubuntu proper into a VM instead of onto hardware, which actually took care of the two issues I would normally have with it. Because it was in the VM, I didn't have to deal with NVIDIA drivers, which are always a bugaboo for me on Ubuntu-based distros. And it was on a single monitor, because one of the things that drives me crazy about GNOME is the multiple desktop, multiple monitor situation and sorting out how to run them and set default workspace and desktops for individual programs. So single monitor, no NVIDIA drivers. It went in with no hiccups. It ran fine. It looks beautiful. Just honestly, personally, at this point in my life, I'm not willing to invest the time that it would take for GNOME to become muscle memory for me to really enjoy being in it. So I can't say anything negative about it other than it's not my choice, not my cup of tea.
And that's perfectly. All right.
It's interesting. I think that whole muscle memory thing is very relevant, because I, for a long time, used Windows, and then when I switched to Linux, and it was GNOME 2, and I never felt like super happy with it. And then when Unity came along, and I was like, yeah, this is it. I'm staying here. Well, so I thought.
So how long do you think it takes for, on average?
Well, I think I think if you're flexible, it doesn't actually matter at all, because like here I'm using KDE. There's GNOME Shell there. There's Unity there, and then over there's Ubuntu Mate, and they're all completely different.
But do you set them up to look the same or to act the same?
No.
Do with the default.
Pretty much out of the box. The only one that's different is KDE. I've got the launcher down the left-hand side like I would with Unity. But they're all pretty much stock default. So, but I don't know. There's not a lot. Alt-Tab works on all of them the way you'd expect, except GNOME Shell, which is now fixed. So that's good. Yay. There's very little. I don't know. There's very little. I have muscle memory that's forcing me to stay on these. So I've kind of gone. I've got past that, where I felt I can only use this desktop now that I can just switch between them. Like I can spend half a day on this and then switch to GNOME Shell and half a day on Unity. And like today, I've been switching between Unity downstairs on my laptop and KDE upstairs, and not had any problem.
So and for me, it's that way between like a pure TTY environment, just pure command line, and then something like Plasma or XFCE. It's just those two I can switch to, not even think about. I've never really put in the time with GNOME. In the 20 years I've been playing on Linux, I'll go into it and I've never honestly given it a fair shake of more than a day or two before I just switched back. And so it's nothing against GNOME. It's just I never put in the time to learn it that well.
I'm gonna throw a plug out there for Pop! OS, just simply because some of the things they've done with standardizing or setting scene keyboard defaults. It's one of the things that they do to the default GNOME desktop, that and a couple extensions, but for the most part, it's pretty much vanilla. More vanilla, I would say, than Ubuntu is. But they did put a lot of effort into, and if you take the time to learn their keyboard shortcuts, you can be really productive, because they have set a lot of custom ones that don't exist in vanilla. And that's something actually. So when you think about things that you use all the time, when I open a terminal, if the font's too small, I just hit Control plus, Control Shift plus. That does not work on Ubuntu that I can tell. I could not
We've
figure out.
had that for years. That's always been there.
I could not, in this install in 1904 I could not find a way to zoom the text. There's no menu option for it, and none of the keyboard shortcuts work. Now, maybe maybe I did something, I don't know, but I was dumbfounded by that.
Control plus and Control minus are not working here either on Ubuntu.
Are you using Shift as well? Control Shift plus.
Yeah, I tried both.
And you're not the plus and minus on the 10 key. It's the ones next to the 0.
Next to the 0, yeah.
Does anyone
no,
know
that works.
Oh, so that does work? Okay.
tab behavior? Is that like it's not via the normal extension, is it? It's some kind of change in like how keybinds are assigned? Like how is the alt tab changed in Ubuntu?
We changed it from the default GNOME behavior, which is alt tab switches between applications, and then alt key above tab switches between windows of applications, which is the same as Unity, but the difference with GNOME is when you switch to a different application, it brings all of the windows for that application to the front. So if you have like 5 terminals open and a web browser, and you switch from the web browser to the terminal, all 5 terminals hit you in the face, and that's mental. If you want to just switch between one terminal and a browser because you're copying and pasting code, you don't want to have all the terminals punch you in the face, because then it obliterates what you were looking at in the browser. You just want to be able to flick between them. So yeah, that was changed in 1904.
Mm-hmm.
To get back to what Eric was saying, though, about the keyboard shortcuts are great, and those actually don't bother me too much in the switching. What I would have to wrap my head around with GNOME would be the way it handles desktops and workspaces. Because I know you can link the workspaces on multiple monitors together, or leave the secondary one static while the primary one is the one that multiplies and switches back and forth. And just that difference between that and the other desktops where they're just static and run together according to desktop, that's where I would have to actually take the time to get my head in the habit of thinking in terms of that different workflow.
I completely agree with you. And actually, I don't use multiple desktops on GNOME explicitly because it does that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard.
So, quick question back to you for this terminal thing. So, Control minus does make it smaller, and Control Shift plus does make it bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So, why doesn't it work on the plus and minus of the number pad?
Because it's mapped to the buttons.
Right. It's mapped to a specific key.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think you can add it as probably as a secondary.
Not everybody has a numpad. Think of like a laptop user.
If you're on a laptop, yeah.
Sorry.
Sure. Just briefly, I love Ubuntu 1904. I love GNOME. In fact, I've installed the YARU theme on my other Arch install on my desktop. Works great. And in fact, on my work laptop in a VM, I'm running Ubuntu GNOME. It just works great. I love what Ubuntu has done with it. It's super fast. GNOME has been great. I like a keyboard workflow. I've always liked it. Try to stay away from the mouse. No complaints here. Keep it up.
Nice. Very nice. All right. I believe that was a very overall good experience for Ubuntu when you compare everybody's opinions. Obviously, and to be honest with you, most of the negativity comes from the not liking GNOME thing and not really anything to do with what Ubuntu puts out. So I think people just need to have more open mind. That's what I think. All right.
I'm curious though. So from that open letter that went out about the theming the applications, was any of that directed toward Ubuntu's improvements to GNOME?
Yeah, it was totally directed at us and Pop OS.
Okay.
Yeah, because they theme because they have themes. So if you look at Fedora and Arch, for example, they just
and OpenSUSE.
And OpenSUSE, it's just thanks, Nate. It's just the default versus Ubuntu and Pop, and they have their own themes.
Yeah.
And so,
more specifically, those are the specific themes and icon sets that they chose to display as examples. So they didn't bother going out and finding other examples. They had specific ones in mind. So it's easy to see kind of where they're poking the sticks.
And bringing that up, I have a bone to pick with you guys.
Uh-oh.
So I wasn't here last week, and of course,
yep.
Our regular weekly person, Steve, who emails, he's a member of the community, but he's just never here. He's here in spirit because he's watching now. Multiple emails came through. Yes, everybody say hi to Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Steve. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Multiple emails came through this week, and keep the emails coming, Steve. But he was, kind of digging me here a little bit because 3 weeks prior, I was trying to get us off of the low latency kernel talk because that's what everybody's bringing up. And the week that I don't show up, everybody's talking about some good conversation. Why is that?
I apologize.
It's the way she goes sometimes.
Now, there was so much going on that week. I wanted to be there so bad. Just because of Kubuntu and everything that was going on in the news stories, and life happens.
Well, I think you might have a nice couple of subjects now, if I may be so bold. Let me just take 5 minutes to set the scene, and then I'll ask you guys and girls some questions. So there was a Tech Republic article that said, Scientific Linux and Antigos are shutting down. It's time for Mint to go. Okay.
Here we go.
And then along comes DistroTube, and he does his taking into account with the title, Linux Mint should die. It's a bit dramatic.
Yeah.
And then along comes Joe Collins. Stop hating on Linux Mint. And then in his video goes to talk about both Scientific Linux and taking into account clickbaiting titles. But nowhere in either of those two articles did they say we hate Mint. So Joe Collins is guilty of his own clickbaiting. Joe Collins also then said, very unusually for me, because I tend to watch his stuff, that both those guys showed their ignorance of Linux Mint by not understanding why it was there. And now we've got another guy from Linux Insider who's doing a review on Linux Mint 19.1 and says, well, it's not that great after all, but I've been using it for years. So my question is Linux Mint as bad as supposedly people are saying it is? And why are differing...
Can I go here first?
And why, in a minute, why are differing people fighting with each other and bitching it over each other and just perpetuating the fact that, well, maybe Linux is a bit toxic?
You forgot the first most important thing, Zeb. He also said that Mate was in maintenance mode. So, and there was a... Did you read that part of the article?
No. What, the Scientific Linux one?
Yeah, he said that Mate was in maintenance mode, and Martin kind of...
I missed that.
let him know that is incorrect.
Well, let's just start out this conversation by saying that we are not attacking any person. We'll just say what every one of those guys said. Both Derek and Joe and all of them, that we're not really attacking the person. We're just giving our opinion on their opinions. So there you go.
And it's the process that they went through of like reacting to each other, if that makes sense. So who wants to start? What do you think?
I think it's silly.
Let me start because I have some
Go on in, Big Pod.
mind on this. As you all know, I have some rather weird way of looking at distros. Like they're just not important a lot, but really what the Tech Republic writer wanted to point out was that Probably more importantly would be that Mint guys would focus on cinnamon instead of both cinnamon and the distro, because cinnamon is a great environment, and if it would get all the attention, it would be much better. And DT was just pointing out that maybe Mint isn't good at staying because of burnout, because developers will sooner or later get burnouts since they work on two projects, and maybe it should die. It's nothing like special, and yeah, everything will sometime end. And to be told, there is so many distros that do the same thing. On Ubuntu side, almost every distro that is Ubuntu tries to be that friendly distro. So why should it die? Will it change anything? It won't. It will just be
I
one
disagree.
distro that won't exist.
Mint has its
Something
ways.
something will fill that void.
I disagree completely.
I do too.
Yeah.
100%. Mint isn't about, and this is my take on distributions too. So for everyone who's saying that distributions don't matter anymore, it depends on how you define a distribution, right? We went through this with what is a user, right? That varies. Mint is very good at putting all of the pieces together in a way that makes sense to people that don't already understand Linux. They do a very good job. So when you say Mint is a distribution, yes, it's the Cinnamon desktop on top of an Ubuntu base or the Debian base if you go that route. But the reality is that they do a lot more than that in terms of the way that they package it, the way that they present it to the user, their welcome screen, their software center, the tools that they include for backups. They have put a lot of thought and care and attention to the way that we talked about that first impression. That is a big deal for them. That is something when you boot up that desktop, there is an excellent first user experience, that initial experience. They've been consistent with that, and they've done that with very little fanfare. They don't do any kind of marketing, and it's to their detriment, right? I mean,
that is their biggest problem, is they don't do marketing.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, the fact that is we've seen with distributions coming and going, and I think that kind of sparked this conversation. This is nothing against Derek or Joe, or everyone's going to have some sort of opinion on this. And I'm not saying that people are wrong for having an opinion. I'm saying that they're wrong for saying that Mint offers nothing besides the Cinnamon desktop, because I think that is categorically incorrect.
Agreed.
Yeah, I use XFC.
I think a lot of the issue around it also stems from Mint's long history of just being controversial. It's really easy to pick a side on it and want it to go one way or another. If we look at where Mint started and where it is now, it's possibly not really serving the same purpose it used to, but I'm sure it still does have a purpose, even if it doesn't serve a purpose for me. And while I think the Cinnamon desktop, or rather Linux Mint with the Cinnamon desktop together, is definitely their crown possession, I know that other people use the Mate desktop on there. I know other people use the XFC desktop on there. I used it for like 10 solid months on XFCE back in 7.3, and I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't had that back then. So there's definitely a lot of value in it.
The only thing I would say to that, Chicken, is that I think that Linux Mint is doing exactly what they did before. Like, I think they're accomplishing exactly what they've always accomplished, and that's being one of those distros that you can hand to anybody to use.
Yeah.
That's what they started out as, to be a bridge between Windows and Linux, and I think that's what they still are. And they have their faults.
They were somewhat of like a refugee camp from Ubuntu when a lot of changes happened. And that's kind of like the previous kind of phase that I'm talking about. Is it's no longer like a refugee camp where everybody's running from Unity or everybody's running from changes in Ubuntu. It's more of like now it's its own thing, and it's not really doing that anymore.
I think part of it is too, their reputation over the years has almost become that they're like a Lego or a Tinker Toy distribution that's put together and it's meant for kids or beginners or noobs. And instead it's this rock solid monument that has so much more depth to it and solidity to it that people just don't see because there's so much focus put on the ease of use. And for young people, for new people to Linux, that all the quality behind that ease is missed.
Yeah. So despite my quest for a Linux singularity, so to speak, I do think that Linux Mint offers a nice platform. Now, I think like having an XFCE and other versions, yeah, that's whatever. I guess if you really want to, but I don't see that that's what Mint should carry forward. They should carry forward with the Cinnamon desktop and their own apps that they do develop and develop themselves into their own platform, which they've done a great job of. And it is kind of a shame that people think of it as like, you know, an even easier Ubuntu or however you want to look at it. But I mean, that, in my opinion, that's what distros should do to set themselves apart, is to form their own sort of platform overall. And I think Linux Mint's done a good job of that.
Yep.
So what do we all think then about various media people arguing with each other and rising up, etc.?
It's a vortex.
Cancer.
I think it's just sad, dude, because we are in a state where we have like this opportunity in front of us to bring so many people into Linux. And we talked about, you know, standards and, you know, trying to bring the desktop to the masses. Okay. And yet we are our own worst enemies sometimes by just constantly bickering and fighting with each other. And it's just so not necessary. Like you basically just end up fanning the flames over nothing. And like I said, you know, I watched Joe Collins' video and he said he wasn't trying to attack Derek personally, but it ended up being where he was pretty much, I mean, he was attacking pretty hard on his opinion, and it ends up flaring up, and you know, Derek responds to it, and it's not necessary. It's just not necessary, and it only hurts Linux.
There is a, so taking a step back, Mint, I agree with Chicken that Mint started out as a refugee for people who didn't like Ubuntu, or somewhere that you could get a friendly Linux environment that had all the cheeky codecs bundled in, you know, all these like unique selling points for people coming from Windows. Was like, I need to be able to play my media, right? And since then, Ubuntu has fixed those problems. It's easy to get a hold of the codecs on Ubuntu. You press a button during the install, and it's easy to get drivers, and it's pretty user friendly. There are still people who don't like that. That's fine. Use Linux Mint, and over time, Linux Mint has grown their audience, and they have a very loyal set of users. They have people who donate on a regular basis. Some of those are companies who are only doing it really to get a link on the Linux Mint website, not really supporting Linux Mint. They're just doing it because they get Google ad revenue, like Google click-throughs. That's the only reason they do it. So don't be fooled by thinking that these people are supporting Linux Mint out of some altruistic means. They're not. Normal users generally are, though. And they've built up. They have somewhere in the region of 400,000 users, Linux Mint total, and that's not to be sniffed at. Like, you've got Ubuntu, then Linux Mint, then basically everyone else. No other distro comes close to Linux Mint's numbers at all. So they're doing something right. They're really doing something right. If they can sustain that core base of 400,000 or so users, who are, some of which are donating money to keep the thing going. And so long as Clem can keep his mind focused on keeping that distro, keeping that ship tight and running in the right direction, I think they'll be fine. I think the media side of it, the article was stupid. I think there is a small set of Linux YouTubers who have this, for want of a better word, circle jerk of when one of them makes a video about one thing, the next one will make the video about the same topic. Then the next one will make, and so within a week, everyone's done a video on Clear Linux. The next week, everyone's done a video on Mint. The next week, it'll be something else, and they're all chasing these clicks, and it's part of the toxic atmosphere of YouTube in general. And unfortunately, Linux is not a super diverse and exciting place to be to make videos about. So you have to do this in order to get clicks. Like, it's pretty boring most of the time. And Linux YouTube will tell you they don't make a lot of money out of clicks.
Yeah, I think Linux Mint is a very complex issue. If you're looking at the apps, they have unique apps. They have very good defaults. I know people always say you can change this option, you can change this other thing. When you're talking about newbies, they're not going to change anything out of the box. It's very important what's default, and this is when Linux Mint shines. Now, if you want to go into the funding of Linux Mint, that is probably very controversial because I don't know how much of it they give back to Ubuntu, since a lot of the infrastructure for Linux Mint is Ubuntu. Another issue with Linux Mint is the repos. I mean, Ubuntu recompiles the Debian repos and makes them from themselves. Linux Mint only just connects you to Ubuntu for it. It's not their own repos.
But is there something inherently wrong with that?
Issues on top of that, though, because the repositories that they do have, like specifically for Mint stuff, they also prioritize certain repositories over like a user added PPA, which means that if you go to install something that you need or whatever, if any single part of that is something they already have or is something they have depends on, they completely override the user in that case, and essentially you end up with a broken package set, and you now have to.
It's a difficult balancing act they have, because what they want to do is use the packages that come from the Ubuntu archive and overlay their Mint user experience on top. And they don't want that to get compromised by some update that comes along in Ubuntu. So they have their repository on top, which has different newer versions or pinned versions of their packages. And I think they've been burned in the past. So that the thing that's led them down this path is they've been burned in the past where a security update in Ubuntu has wrecked the desktop of Linux Mint users. So they're trying to keep the desktop working where they're not in control of the vast majority of software in the repository. So like when we put an update in Ubuntu, we're in control of the archive, and we can talk to all the flavors and make sure that this thing landing in the archive doesn't break Ubuntu Mate, and this thing we add in the archive, a new version of Qt, doesn't break the KDE desktop. But because Mint sits outside the Ubuntu family, just consuming the archive and then layering their stuff on top, they don't get the benefit of that. And so they have to do whatever they can, pinning and holding versions of software to give the users a stable user experience. And it's a byproduct of them not building their own archive.
It's a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
So how difficult would it be for them to build their own archive?
So building it is, I mean, they could be, I mean, look at Solus. They have their own build system. They build their own packages. They queue them up, and away they go. They build. Someone has to pay for that. So there's like server build hosting, and then you've got to host it. Like, who's going to pay for all the updates for the 400,000 users who are going to hit that every single day? Like, the bandwidth costs for the Ubuntu archive, set aside the fact that we have loads of mirrors, the Ubuntu archive on its own is a tremendous amount of money to host that archive. So it's a cost I don't think they could probably bear at the moment.
Yeah, and the time that it would take for someone to be managing that packaging and maintaining it. I mean, it's more. So we're talking about diluting. Yeah. So the premise of the article is diluting Cinnamon by focusing on Mint as a distro. That's even more work on top of it. So I had one other comment. So if people keep bringing up this article or the post that Clem made earlier this year about possibly being frustrated, and I mean, I think it was just a very human moment of him sharing. Like, I don't read into that at all, that he was like defeated or, walking away. To me, it was really just a guy saying, like, there's a lot of things we want to do. There's a lot of challenges on our time and energy and the money that we have available. And so we have to pick our battles and do what we can. And sometimes that's really not the most pleasant experience. And having worked in software development and understanding that it is challenging to have a roadmap to hit dates to try to meet the needs of your user base. And so I guess I don't appreciate the fact that he was sharing a very human sense of this is where I am, this is how I feel, this is like me as a person. And everybody sort of has taken that and said, oh, it's all over, Mint's falling apart and Clem's frustrated and he's going to quit. And it's like, I didn't get that at all. And so
he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders with all those, if he walked away, that's close to 500,000 people you're going to annoy. Like, that's not a small proportion of people that, are going to get a little bit upset. And so it's reasonable to want to vent that sometimes. And I think he did a following blog post, and he seems a lot happier now. I think predictions of Mint's
the fact that they're so transparent, right? I mean, the fact that he will write that, the fact that he will share how their financials, the fact that he shares all of that stuff is just, I mean, in terms of if you were trying to invest your time and energy on what should I standardize my workflow or my company or whatever, Mint is an option in that sense, because I feel like they have that amount of accountability, transparency. I'm not trying to call people out on it. I just think it's one of those things that I keep seeing over and over, and it really I just don't get it.
Well, go ahead, Barb.
Sometimes people they overreact to something. I read that same his whole thing, and I got the same impression you did. It wasn't like he was throwing in the towel and saying, I give up, I can't do this. He was just presenting what the things were, what the challenges are. But meanwhile, other people see that, and then all of a sudden they say, and they think that's like red meat to just sit and tear it apart. And then somebody else has, it goes around and around. And that's not even what he said. He was just expressing this is what we have to deal with.
Yeah, and I think some people are put off by the fact that he really doesn't do media stuff.
Yeah, that's his choice. He may feel very uncomfortable. Yeah. He may not even like to get interviewed. There are people like that. That's just the way he probably is. And he shouldn't be busted for it.
Can you blame the guy? I mean,
yeah.
The way we were just talking about the way YouTubers are with their stuff, and Joe and DistroTuber, who are they're all beefing, and the toxicity that comes around the media and Linux and the media everywhere in general. But the idea that we have, the face of Linux to the normal people are people who are just sensationalizing the smallest little things. I don't blame him at all for being reluctant to post things. And I mean, when he, you look at it in the way of him doing a very human moment, it's a very kind of vulnerable way to put himself out that way. And then everyone just oh, I guess he's just quitting, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody click my website, Google ads, just it's absurd. And
I would like, sorry, Adam. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to see Linux Mint have some sort of front man like Popey, Wimpy, Run with the Dolphin, because it's always good to hear from these people when they're interviewed from Destination Linux and things like that, because I find it quite interesting and fascinating to hear what they've got to say. And I think they could, sell their distro a little bit more, because I've been using.
No.
Almost.
I think we lost him.
I'd like to say something about what Colin was saying.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Mint probably does have an issue with is they don't really have that leader that's out there that people can talk to. I think they have a long-running podcast, and I think he made one appearance ever on that podcast. And Colin was going back to saying having somebody to be that spokesperson that does seem that would be something that would be really smart for them to do. Someone that was just that community face that would be out there in a situation like that. And I mean, there is a lot of, just like we were talking earlier about the hate that Canonical gets, Mint gets some hate too, which is there was a security lapse, and they made an interesting choice in how they did security updates in a version, which is something that is a very real thing that happened. And I think they make a nice distro. And I mean, obviously there's some good stuff going on, because Budgie took Nemo and added it into their distro. So they're doing some decent stuff. But if they had a little bit more of a public face that people could interact with and maybe just get that little feeling that you get like the Dolphin gives. I mean, Martin is just different than anything, so it's hard to compare. And that's just, I don't know, that's where I was thinking, and I think that's what Colin was kind of saying a little bit too before he left us.
I used to rail on Mint quite a lot, and part of it was because it was easy to do. Part of it was because I didn't know any better and I was arrogant, and it was kind of an easy target. And I did have a lot of issues with it that I didn't like, and I genuinely thought were poor things. Partially the way security updates were done, and other things had to do with just kind of spreading all this effort out. Like getting rid of KDE was good for the project, despite the fact that it was bad for people who preferred KDE. But I feel like over time, I've kind of come to learn that there's a lot more that goes into any of these projects than just a guy hammering away at some, piece of code and it just happens. It's not all just a snap of the fingers and it's there. It's not all just something they push out in an evening. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of money in many cases. But the other thing is that none of this would be here anyway if someone didn't want it. There's always more to it than just I don't like it, so it's awful, or they have made progress and they've shown consistently that they learn from their mistakes, no matter how timely or untimely it may be. And I do feel like there's life in the project nonetheless. So
Well, and I think that's ultimately kind of part of the thing is, I know Chris Titus will say, distro doesn't matter, and he is technically correct, but for a lot of us, that is just not something that we're interested in doing. We're not interested in taking a desktop and really swapping it over because of conflicts that could happen or whatever. But I know I commented on Derek's video, DT, I think this morning, and somebody replied with, like, why? Like, because I said ultimately I thought Linux Mint was an excellent choice for new users, and it's allowed me to really kind of focus in on learning some of the other things. And the person was like, why? I really just legitimately don't understand. And it's obviously somebody who's way more technical and way more into some of the background stuff. But for me, it took a lot of those things that I didn't need to worry about away, so I could focus in on learning some things in the terminal and learning some other things and not having to worry about the 500 options that KDE has hidden in menus somewhere. So that was the thing that kind of is missed, I think, by some people that are more experienced in things, is it gets people a way to get in, and to me it really gave a intuitive way to come from Windows.
Well, I think we forget as a community very often, and we should be reminded of it very often, how it was to be a new user. How it was to come over to an operating system that was completely foreign, that you didn't know how to do anything, and you didn't even know if you wanted to learn how to do everything. You just were trying something new, and Linux Mint fills that gap, basically, for those people who come over and maybe they don't ever want to touch a terminal. Okay, there's many people like that just want to use their computer. They don't want to run Windows. They would be okay running Linux, but they don't want to learn Linux. And for some people, that's okay. And I think that too many times we forget that, and we kind of like eat ourselves as a community instead of just embracing everybody and enjoying the fact that we have new users. We kind of push people away. We push the distros away that bring those new users. And it's a shame because, going back to the videos, I respect Derek, and I believe he should be entitled to his own opinion. And I respect Joe, and he should be entitled to his own opinion. I just don't think we should be arguing back and forth and just being that general way. That looks bad on Linux. It looks bad on everybody.
Well, what's the old line from the Crosby, Stills, Nash song? Nobody's right if everybody's wrong.
Yep.
I mean, it's, you can have an opinion, but just because I think something is a certain way, doesn't mean, this is me personally. I don't think someone else is wrong just because they have a differing opinion. They just see things differently than I do. The thing that I took exception with, and I think that maybe Joe kind of just got triggered and like went off on, was the fact that there was this insinuation that Mint held no value. And I think that was really like a step too far, where it's, you know, to Chicken's point, like where he was maybe just didn't understand the amount of effort that went in. And this whole discussion and argument around the, you know, the fragmentation of the Linux space, and like, it's all about passion, right? People care because they're passionate about this stuff. They argue because they care, because it matters to them. And yeah, it's not front page news and exciting, and hey, I use Linux, and you're like, what the hell is Linux? Like, it to us, it matters. To us, it's important, right? And so that's why we get all worked up about it, because we want to support, we want to, you know, see the things that we love succeed. But, you know, I've also come to the realization that the amount of effort that goes into the simplest little things with all of this, and the fact that it's happening on a regular cadence every 6 months, and the fact that Canonical has been salient and continues to put out Linux, I mean, it's a miracle that that he's made it work as well as he has. And I just, the hate for Canonical, or the hate for anything, is ridiculous. Like, it doesn't affect you. It doesn't, there's nothing that you know, if you don't like Canonical, fine, don't use it. But for God's sakes, why do you have to go out and badmouth stuff?
And I think that was the message that I was trying to get across when I was picking this topic. And I just want to reiterate what Big Daddy said. I'm not specifically picking on Derek or Joe, but when you've got YouTube channels like that, you have to be very careful in what you say and how you say it. And to put out a video, which you're putting out every week, you know, where he says, taking into account, and he gives his opinions on things, and then Joe comes back with a rebuttal, and then he comes back with another rebuttal. You've just got to realize you are the voice and face of Linux. So keep it civil, stop, count to 10, and then say, do you know what? I don't need to answer that because it's not worth answering. And just go on next week and pick your next 4 subjects that you're going to do about. And Joe will then go on and do his topics. When you've got the voice of Linux, you just have to be very, very careful.
And to add on to that, Zeb, both of those were clickbait. All of it was clickbait titles. Okay. Derek wasn't saying that Linux Mint should die. He was just giving his opinion on that it didn't have a whole lot of value. And he's entitled to that opinion, and he can have that opinion. But like I said, you know, just.
I mean, I had to jump on. I was doing a lot of stuff around the house, and I apologize. But a lot of this stuff is very, you know, hits a soft spot in me, you know, or pricks me in a certain way. I tell my leadership that when we're working with people, as leaders, we have the power to make or break someone's day. And just because we don't like the way they're doing, if we're going to be good teachers or good mentors, we have to have a certain patience that supersedes everything else. We can say in private, or someone that we trust, hey, that person really just doesn't get it. But it might take them a few times. And I'm kind of sensitive to this because I have a son with autism. But when I was watching it at the club today, when his thing, when I was hearing about there is no safe spot, that I felt that was wrong too. I posted a thing on MeWe about a Reddit article that pops up on my Google feed sometimes when I'm looking for articles to read on, and a lot of them come up about Linux. And this kid found virus on his parents' Windows 7 machine. So he installed an Ubuntu, but he installed an Ubuntu 16.10. Okay, so it's a little out of date. But the kid made a choice, and instead of maybe nurturing him or talking, boy, everybody lambasted him about, you know, oh, Opie wants to be proud, you know, he did something. And they just really labeled him. And I'm like, that is just so wrong, you know, as Zeb says, and I'm sorry for being long-winded here, I don't often say much, but as even my small channel, we do this for a specific reason. I know I don't want hate, and I want it to be a safe spot when people come and see me. And everybody is welcome, whether you're on Windows or Mac, and it doesn't really matter or what distribution. To be really mean or say it's not safe, or there's no needed for an existence of this thing or that, I'm sorry, I just find it is so wrong. Sorry, I just had to get that out, guys.
Well,
Can I just jump on what Eric said real quick? That if you're going to do all the negative stuff, put your toe in the water and see what's going on behind the scenes and how much work is going. And if you do that just a little bit, your opinion and how you think of things can change radically.
And I think it goes back to Popey's assertion of the vocal minority, because the reality is that most of us use what we use. We love it. We don't hate on other people or other things. We all react strongly to these negative things that do bubble to the surface. And in some regards, that's okay. It's all right for us to be passionate, but in other regards, we have to remember that is a very small number of and Reddit is the worst, right? I mean, that's
true, but you're just wrong. and people repeat this stuff. They see it on a website or see it in a YouTube video, and that forms their opinion, and they'll repeat that. Like someone posted the article in question on the Ubuntu discourse yesterday, and we were discussing it, and the guy asserted that everybody hated Unity. It's like, well, no. A few vocal people on the internet, may have said they didn't like it, and I've certainly met a few people who didn't like it. That's not everyone, so I think there's a lot of generalization, and there's a lot of taking one person's opinion and appropriating that and reproducing it. And it doesn't do anyone any favors. It really doesn't.
There's a reason organizations have PR people.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I said at a time that we need to be unified as best as we can, it's not a great time for that. So, all right. Well, we didn't pick a. Go ahead, Bash.
You really like to push that unity, don't you?
He does.
Do you know what?
I like Unity.
I'll give you a tiny little stat. Now, in 2019, there are probably more people still using Unity than any other desktop, other than GNOME in Ubuntu. If you take away the 1804, when we've got huge numbers of users, there are more people still on 1604 using Unity than any other desktop. That's a huge number of people,
if not all the other desktops put together.
Yes.
I loved it. I mean, and I was never afraid to say that I really enjoyed using it, but people just, they would beat on you just about by saying that you like, and it was always the same few people. It wasn't the majority of people.
I didn't love it until somebody put out an article that it should die, and then it died.
Big Pod, just jump in, son. Come on.
May I interject? It's over. It should be over in about a minute. So.
Yeah, we got to go.
I wanted to say one thing about,
oh my gosh,
about the fragmentation and distros and everything else, because I just want to say, people should just let their nerd flag fly, and whatever happens, happens. I mean, really. And we love we love the computery things because we love it. And if we're all forced down one certain path, I think when you really squeeze, like Darth was it what Princess Leia said to Darth Vader, then systems will squeeze between the fingers. If you try and squeeze people, you're just going to lose them. And I don't think, let your nerd flag fly.
You definitely let the nerd flag fly there.
I'll say.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, wait. We didn't pick a distro for this week. So what are we going to do?
We all know what it's going to be.
What do we? How do we know what it's going to be?
We know what it's going to be.
I don't know what it's going to be.
Zeb, say it. Say it, Zeb.
Well, no, because I think we did that. We did Peppermint 9 in January.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that is Peppermint 10, right? I mean,
yeah, it is.
5 months ago.
6 months away, but it's up to you guys. I mean, I don't think we've ever done or haven't done it for an awful long time. Ferrin OS, and it's cinnamon based.
I know we've talked about it before, and I don't.
Can I?
And I think.
Can I ask a question?
Look at it once before he was going to, or he told us to wait because he wasn't ready with it at that point.
Have we ever done Linux Mint cinnamon?
Yeah.
Linux Mint or Ferrin? You just said
No,
Ferrin.
I'm saying Linux Mint Cinnamon. Have we?
We did a pick. We had
We did
either
Linux Mint 19.1 on the 12th of January.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And when did we do Farron?
Never.
Never.
As far as
Then let's
I
do.
can see. Oh, yes, we did. Sorry, November of last year.
November.
Yeah, November of last year we did.
Does
Ferrin.
he have a recent release, or is he working on one, or what's the deal?
Yeah, no, he's got one. He's got one now based on 19.1 or whatever the latest Mint is. His problem is at the moment he's torn between does he keep following Cinnamon or he's in love with KDE at the moment and trying to get that going. So he's got a Ferrin KDE experimental,
which is good. I've tried it.
Ferrin Next. Ferrin Next, it's called.
It's called Ferrin Next, yeah.
Yeah, I've tried both. I've been using Ferrin off and on for months, and he has some really cool ideas. That's why I mention it so often. You hear me mention Ferrin pretty frequently. Like, he's done some really cool things with the way he's, especially in Plasma, with how he enables theming and layouts and stuff like that. That I think the KDE team should take a look at. But
Well, here I will suggest another one. When's the last time we did Pop OS?
November
Yeah,
2018.
They have a brand new release.
So they have the 1904 as well. So what do you want to do? You want to do Pop OS or do you want to do Farron OS?
Or do we want to do Arch?
Well, that's also
Ellen says Clearline.
that's also a opportunity to do Arch because but that's all month long too. So
We've done a lot of Ubuntu based in like last couple of times, so we should maybe change it up a bit.
any other suggestions?
Well, there's Leap 15.1.
I say Red Hat 8.
Puppy Linux.
Okay, so we got to narrow it down a little bit here.
I'm for Arch or one Arch distro, whatever.
The only problem with doing an Arch install is half of us are not going to do it.
You could go Arco, Manjaro, whatever, something like that. Arco probably would be better option.
Did we do?
We did do Arco.
Did we do Arcos?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a while back.
A while back, yeah. But the interesting thing about Manjaro is they've got, I know it's only a pre-release, but I've tried it and actually quite good. And it incorporates XFCE 4.14 as much as they possibly can.
Well,
yeah, they've actually done a pretty good job at having both of those, whatever's left of the previous version mixed in with it. And it doesn't seem like it's out of place. So you can't really tell much the difference between it other than things are just working better.
I'm down with Farron.
Yeah, let's try Farron. And we should probably wait for Manjaro to release the main version of it.
The main beta, yeah.
So that we can, see it at its full potential rather than just partial.
So do we want to
Here's an
do?
interesting twist then. Let those people who want to check the KDE Ferrin out do that, and others check the Cinnamon Ferrin
That's
out.
fine.
Or both.
I'm okay with that. Or both. All right.
So,
Do one
okay,
in the
Eric,
VM inside the other.
now you've got to find the links really quickly and put them in chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Okay.
So,
I'm sorry,
Zeb,
what's the challenge for next week?
Farron OS.
Fair, okay.
Yeah, and whether you wish to choose KDE or the Cinnamon version is up to you.
Yep.
Okay, I'll try it this time.
PZ, last
As
word,
long
brother.
as you stick with a single click and a low latency kernel, you can do either desktop.
I do want to say last week Dave was my hero. Single click plasma for the win. What's his last word?
Okay, single click.
I loved it. I loved it. And I did also love Steve's comment too. Zeb was the man, and everybody else was eye candy. That was great.
Okay.
All right, Zeb, last word.
I've never been called that.
Well, I'd just like to thank you for putting this on every week, Rocco. It is really, really great. And it was great having you back this week. Don't do that again. No more holidays, okay?
Okay.
Oh, Zeb, you did great.
No more weddings.
Eris.
I just want to say thank you for the stream, as always. It was a great time. And since Alan's here, thank you for Ubuntu.
I did nothing. I did nothing. It wasn't me.
I missed the HUD. I love Unity, and I miss the HUD every day. Thank you.
Vash, last word, brother.
Well, thanks for the stream as always. By the way, I run Mint.
Yeah. Peter, last word.
I run Mint from version 6 to 16 for a long time. Run the Linux Mint Facebook group. Met a lot of great people that are so great friends. I wouldn't be here without Linux Mint. I'll just leave that out there. Looking forward to trying Fern for next week.
Nice. Bill.
I just want to thank you and Zeb for doing this. And I'm going to go out and say something that we don't say. We just finished all the 1904s. So thank you to everyone at Canonical, and thank you to Mark Shuttleworth.
Dan, last word.
Thanks again, Rocco. Really glad you're back this week. That's awesome. We missed you. You are the glue that holds us together. That's for sure. We tried to fill in for you, but we did miss you. And looking forward to meeting everybody next week. Thanks a lot.
Nice. Eric, last word.
All right. So Rocco's the glue, but I got to say, Anna in the comments says that Zeb is the eye candy. So there you go.
Hang on, it's
Her
Anna's
wife loves Zeb.
It's Anna's other half. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, take what you can get, right? There you go. This is so much fun. What can I say? I would do this every day if I could. Thanks everybody for showing up. Ubuntu, Canonical, fantastic work. You know, I will be, unless you do something really horrible, I will continue to be a .ubuntu user of some sort.
It's been known to happen in the past.
Well, but that's with all the different flavors. So even if they did something horrible to one of the desktops, the base itself is really what keeps me coming back, right?
I'll tell the guys to try not to do that.
Okay, if you could, Pup, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I will do.
So yeah, I mean, nothing much else to say other than thank you very much for giving me as a misfit, right? We're all, so to Nate's point, right? We're all doing something other than just using Windows or Mac for a reason, right? We like this platform. We like these desktops. We like to try different things. And this group is a great example of the diversity in that space. We all have different opinions, and yet here we are having a wonderful conversation together. So thank you and have a wonderful week, everyone.
Chris, last word.
Well, if I can do a little bit of shameless promoting here. I got in touch with a guy in Thailand on our ham radio over at the museum, and I was pretty proud of that. So I was doing that before I came up here. But anyway, back to on the subject, the usual praises and make sure that I wasn't muted there. Okay. Usual praises that love doing this and love this community, and I'm glad I'm able to contribute. And I don't know, we'll get that Dolphin file manager in there somehow, right?
That's right. Barbara, last word.
Okay, I want to thank Rocco as always. I want to thank you. And to Eric's comment about us being misfits, yes, we are Rocco's group of misfit toys. How's that?
Rocco's Raucous Misfits.
Yes, there we go.
I had it written down. I was waiting to say it.
No, and it just I look forward to this every week. I really do, because as I've said before, I live in the Linux desert around here. So this to me is my love. So thank you, everybody.
Chicken.
Sorry, I was preparing the pinned message. I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here, and thank you to all the different insights that you guys provide. Rocco, thank you to hosting. Mr. Popey and Wimpers that was here earlier. Really nice to have you guys around, and I learned a lot today about how different people view different things in the Linux sphere, and for me, that's always a good thing. If we're learning, we're doing something right. So thank you guys all for being here, and thank you to the people watching the stream, because it'd be kind of weird if nobody was watching this.
It'd be kind of weird, but we would still get together and talk, and we would still have a good time.
We would.
And just to prove that, we have an after show that lasts an hour probably, and we just sit around and talk.
Even more, yeah.
Tony, last word.
Well, we missed you last week, Rocco. But to be fair, Zeb did a brilliant job, and everything worked from the start. There was no problems with YouTube.
Funny how that is.
I'm not saying it's your fault or
Right,
anything.
of course you're not.
Just making a point. But all joking aside, I think Steve's very own has the expression when he said that come for the Linux and stay for the community. I came for Linux, and even when it doesn't work properly, it doesn't matter because it's free and open source and you can move on. And I really appreciate all the work and effort that goes in by people like Alan Pope and all the other people that make these things and maintain them so that we have a choice. Otherwise, it's Windows or Mac. No, don't want to go there. So it's great being here with everybody. I look forward to it every week, and I look forward to it next week. So thanks, everyone.
Excellent.
Alan?
Thanks, Rocco. Thanks for inviting me. It's always lovely to have a chat with all of you and listen to your problems and understand different people's perspectives on the world of Linux. And I just noticed Nate said in chat he loves OpenSUSE, tolerates Android, but the Commodore 64 will never leave his side. Dude, Sinclair Spectrum's where it's at. You know that.
Bravo. Bravo.
Adam, last word.
Thanks for doing this, Rocco. It's always a fun time. As people in the Telegram group have probably noticed, I've been rather frustrated with various issues in the Linux community and Linux in general lately. And, it's kind of a bummer. I spend all week getting frustrated at clickbait and other things. And then I come in here on Saturday and I'm like, it's a nice cleanse. It's a nice, these are normal people. These people exist. Awesome. So thanks, guys. Thanks to everybody, not just Rocco. So good job, guys.
Nate, last word.
Thanks again, Rocco, for having me and letting me join late. I appreciate these discussions. It's like a warm, cozy nerd blanket I get to cuddle up with every Saturday night. So I really appreciate that. and I wasn't lying. I really do have my Commodore 64 with an SD card reader that came from the UK, from The Future Was 8-Bit.
Oh,
and also
I have the same thing.
Oh, nice. And I have this. This is actually normally on my network, and it is chatting. I got an Ethernet card on this too. It's got a whopping 10 megabit per second. So. Anyway, thanks for having me. I love it. I appreciate being here. So,
you're such a nerd, dude.
I can't help it.
Dave, last word.
Welcome back, Rocco. Thank you so much for being willing to herd this bunch of cats that gathers here each Saturday night. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Steve, last word.
Yes, thanks for letting me join on and let me go on about it, but it's pretty passionate. But this community, I think again and again proves itself. And it's not just this, it's the people that are in the chat, and they go from you to Destination Linux to me to Toss, and they're always great and fantastic, and I can never thank them enough. And having this opportunity to voice an opinion is fantastic. So thank you, guys.
Colin, last word.
Well, thanks for letting me join, Rocco, and then thanks for letting me join again, Rocco. And my Zoom went boom, and I was out of the room. I don't know what happened there, and now I'm back on Linux Mint. So, it's always fun. Thanks for being here, Rocco. And not disappearing on us once again. So, great conversations. I don't know what happened to my conversation earlier, but people must have been staring at me like, "Oh, where was I?" I don't know.
Somebody picked up on your conversation, knew what you meant, and continued on with it.
Yeah, I didn't hear any of that. I had to change all my leads and everything, my cables and stuff. So, it's great. Love joining this every week. So, thanks very much.
Big Pod, last word.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having us. And I would like to say that while I don't agree with you guys, I do think everyone should have an opinion, and that anyone's opinion shouldn't be shut down or silenced just because majority doesn't agree with it. And if nothing else, stuff like this should be taken from these talks we have here. Again, thank you for having me. Thank you, Rocco, for having us all, and thank you everyone for watching us talk. We'll see you next week, I think.
Yeah. Tuck stop. Last word.
Thanks, Rocco and Zeb, for doing this every week, and thanks everyone for putting up such a great show every week. And also want to thank Canonical for raising the bar with Ubuntu 1904, and to all the developers who spend countless hours out of labor of love supporting all the Linux packages, software distribution. So can't thank the community enough.
All right, that is it for us. We are going to try Farron OS next week. I do want to thank Ubuntu, everyone at Ubuntu and Canonical, for giving us the base for what we use and love every single day, and that is much appreciated. I also want to thank each and every one of you for being here and everybody in the chat, because this is, for me, just as fun for me as it is for you guys. So I appreciate that. Don't forget, next week, I believe, if I am looking at my date calendar correct, it would be June the 8th, Saturday, the second week of the month, which means Biddle Europe edition at 3 p.m. EDT. So check that out, and we'll have our regular Biddle at 8 o'clock. Other than that, I think that's all I got. I know there's something else that I wanted to say, but I can't remember what it is. So we'll just leave it at, let's try to bring the community together rather than get our own opinions across. How's that? And everybody remember, long live Linux.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Tschüss. Auf Wiedersehen. Das Vidania.
Yeah.
Do svidania.
Adios.
Говорите,
So long, farewell.